Hello everybody, today I will give you some explanation on how to quantify enlarged perivascular spaces on MRI scan using visual scoring method based on counting of enlarged perivascular spaces. So this is not about automated methods, you can find this in my articles. So yes, let's go. Midbrain, the hippocampi, the basal ganglia and the centrum semioval. In the midbrain and hippocampi, because the regions are smaller, we count perivascular spaces in the complete volume, and in the basal ganglia and the centrum semioval, we count perivascular spaces in a single slice that is anatomically defined. In the basal ganglia, it is the slice that shows the anterior commissure, and in the centrum semioval, that's the slice that is 1 centimeter above the upper slice showing the lateral ventricles. So sometimes choosing the slice, it can already give a bit of variability. In the basal ganglia, for instance, there are multiple slices where you can see the entire commissure, and then you would just pick the one where you see it best. In the centrum semioval, the intensity, it should be the same than the one you see in the rest of the ventricle. So often it will be that as you go up, the intensity, you will still see kind of the ventricles, but the intensity will be lower. Then you would consider that it's not part of the ventricles anymore. So you really have to see like the intensity is, should be very similar to that of the main part of the lateral ventricles. And then you have to think about what's the resolution in Z, so that you can count 1 centimeter. And sometimes it's not like you cannot be exactly at 1 centimeter, but then you would count so that it's the closest to 1 centimeter. Yeah, in Rotterdam, we have like standardized protocols, so this wouldn't be an issue. But in my clinical scans, then it's you have varying voxel size in Z, so then you have to take that into account. The ones that are larger than 1 millimeter, you would count them. The ones that are smaller, you wouldn't, and should be smaller than 3 millimeters, like the diameter. That's how the protocol is designed, but in practice, it's really difficult to say, this one I count it or this one not. So. And that's the big problem with like the quantification of enlarged perivascular spaces. What we do in general is that we kind of think a bit in terms of volume. Intensity is like can also be a marker of the enlargement. So if you see more like gray perivascular spaces, it means that it's gray just because of partial volume effect, you know. So it means that they are basically smaller than perivascular spaces that are whiter. So all the perivascular spaces that are more gray, they are smaller, and those, you could count them maybe as like half a perivascular space. So they wouldn't count less in your estimation of the burden than the ones that are more enlarged. In the Rotterdam scan study, we developed a method to annotate the perivascular spaces. So then you really have to pinpoint like which voxels you think are perivascular spaces. And usually we do it like this, that we start with the less obvious one, that are close to our threshold, so the more grayish one, and then we climb to the ones that are really hyper intense. So that's how I would do it to annotate them, because if you do it the other way around, you will start to highlight more and more like the thinner ones, and in the end it's very difficult to be reproducible. What's important is that you first try to count the perivascular spaces, and then, you know, if there are a lot that are not enlarged, then you try to account also for that. But you have to think, like, let's say if you would do the rating again, would you give approximately the same number, or would it be completely far off? Like, usually it's not really a problem when they don't have that many perivascular spaces, but sometimes when you see a lot of perivascular spaces, you could I don't know, once maybe count like 12, and the other time, because you focused a lot on the smaller ones, maybe you will count like 30. And of course, if you do that, it means that your quantification is not reproducible. So you want to be able to have a rough idea. Like, let's say you did the counting, and then you look kind of globally at the scan or like the slice, either the region or the slice that you annotated, and you can think like, yeah, this number, it makes sense for this region, and like especially in comparison to the ratings you have done in the past. So let's say if you remember that you did some images where there are less Peyer's cluster spaces, but you gave a higher score, then it's not very good because it won't be comparable and not very reproducible. So that's a little bit the attitude that you have to have. Usually in real-time scan study, actually what we do is that we have a little subset. We have 40 scans with different loads of enlarged Peyer's cluster spaces. We have some experts who did the rating on those, and then we ask a person to do the rating twice of these Peyer's cluster spaces, each time in different order and with a few weeks of interval. And then we compute their intra-rater agreement using the intra-class correlation coefficient. And then we can also compare their scores to those of the other raters. So that way we can be sure that there is a good intra-rater correlation, at least on this small subset. First you really count them, and then you kind of try to get an idea like, are there a lot of Peyer's cluster space in this scan or not? Like, is it a high burden, you know? Like not only in terms of number, but in terms also of volume, or like, is it like very white, you know? So on T2, for instance, can you see a lot of Peyer's cluster spaces? If in the few scans you did, there is one that had where you think there was more and when you think there was less, then logically the score of this scan should be in between both of those you rated already. Because it's easy to just, you know, like count a lot once, and then over time you will count less because you think it's, you know, you change a bit or you do it. The most important is that it's consistent from one scan to another. And usually you would do that kind of automatically if you have a lot of experience and did a lot of scans. You know, you would count them kind of quickly, and you would, you know, it would fall in your head in some sort of range, you know, like this, the burden for this scan. But if you don't have a lot of experience, you just did a few, then it's quite difficult to have an idea of that, I think. In the real-time scan study, we use also the flare, and the flare is quite useful if you want to make the difference between Peyer's cluster spaces and white matter densities. In most of cases, you don't actually need the flare to do the difference between Peyer's cluster spaces and white matter densities. But yeah, so it can happen that small white matter densities, they look a bit like Peyer's cluster spaces, and then you would look on flare, and on flare, the white matter densities, they are hyper-intense, and the enlarged Peyer's cluster spaces, they are hypo-intense, black. So then you can very easily discriminate them. But if you only look on T2, both white matter density and enlarged Peyer's cluster spaces are hyper-intense, and for small white matter hyper-intensities, it could be that sometimes the shape is a bit similar. So the easiest way to differentiate it is that you see usually white matter densities are larger, and they don't have like as regular shape. You know, they don't have like this tubular shape of the Peyer's cluster spaces. It's a bit more like random, or more like kind of round, a little bit larger, and also very much the borders of the white matter densities, they're also more like gradients. It's not as sharp as the large Peyer's cluster spaces. Yeah, this is something you have also to take into account, and to be able to be careful not to count white matter densities as Peyer's cluster spaces. There can also be problems in the basal ganglia of infarcts. But I mean, it depends a bit on your data set. Like in our data set, in real-time scan study, there are very few infarcts, so it doesn't really a problem for the quantification of enlarged Peyer's cluster spaces. If you have a more clinical data set, it could become more a problem, like in the basal ganglia. So then it's also good to be a bit aware. So on the T2, it's not very easy to see the difference between infarcts and enlarged Peyer's cluster spaces. In flare, you can see a little halo around the infarct, but they also have the same intensity. So differentiating infarct from enlarged perivascular spaces is never very easy. Usually, like, you can look at the size, so if it's larger lesion, you wouldn't count it as perivascular space, and often it can be an infarct. But sometimes you have to be careful because it can also be perivascular spaces that are very close to each other, and because of the partial volume effect, you see them as one big lesion when there are actually two different lesions. So that's also something you have to take into account. How close do they have to be so that I count them? So yeah, there is no limit. So if you see the perivascular spaces, even if they are very close to each other, you would still count two. It's more about like their enlargement, so basically like their intensity. First I go to the bottom and then I try to locate the basal ganglia. So when you see that the two spaces like this, when you see the butterflies, then it's the beginning. And then, so like I will start, so this slice I don't annotate, this slice I annotate, I mean I score. Then I will go up until you see that this basically like, they fade. So like until you cannot see the CSF around, so like I would go until that slice, I think. Yeah, so from this to that. And here you see that there is like almost no perivascular space basically, like maybe there is one little here. Yeah. I can zoom in a bit. So yeah, you don't see the, maybe like there is one little here, and here a little bit, but it's almost nothing. So this I would just maybe like say either 1 or 0. Then I do the hippocampi. So like it starts here, then goes like this, finishes here, and then the other side also. So I do one side at a time. So like I look at this side, for instance. Here I see one. There is one perivascular space here. Here there is a second one. And here there is a third one. So that would be 3. Like this I think it's just part of the CSF that's inside, you know, so I don't count it. Here there is one maybe like that you could think about, but it's not very enlarged, so I don't think I would count this. So I had 3 on that side, and I go on to the next side. I see like here 1, but the intensity is lower than that of the other side, so it's kind of a small one. So like like 2 small ones, here maybe 1, and that's it. So I would count, I think, 1 on that side and 3 on the other side. So here I would have like 4 perivascular spaces in the hippocampi. So you see this, there are 2, but they are small, so I did like half each, and then I count 1, and this is also not very clear, okay? So yeah, here it could be like 4 or 5 maybe, you know, but not more than that. Then I go to the basal ganglia. So here you can see it, and like now you see here when the anterior commissure is, so you see that you can see it on several slices. You can see the anterior commissure on this slice, you can see the anterior commissure on this slice and on that slice. Yeah, not really. So then I would just put the one in between, so not this. I would take this one because that's the one that's the most clearly seeable. But you could maybe argue whether you take this or that. So that's a bit tricky. So I would take that one in that case, and then I start counting perivascular spaces, and here there are also very few. So maybe there is 1 here. So now I look at the slice number 85 to remember which one I did, so that I don't have to, so that I can scroll easily, but without forgetting so that I don't have to think about the slice number. So here I see 1 perivascular space, that's quite clear. Here there is also 1. So this one I can see it in that slice, so I count it. This one I could see it in the slice. But yeah, so it's really low. So here And then I see other ones, you know, like I see maybe this thing or this one here, like it's also like small perivascular space, or maybe here. So I can see a lot more perivascular spaces. Also here, actually, like maybe this one. Yeah, I see this, but you see, there are quite some. Also, this one is at the limit, almost like in the insula. So I see quite some perivascular spaces, but there are not a lot that are really prominent. So here I think I would at most, so the slice was this one. So here I think I would at least, you know, say at most I think 2, you know. Maybe this one is very small. So I think here I would just say 2, you know, basically. Yeah. So in the Potter score, which is different rating scale, you would count the slice that has most perivascular spaces. In Rotem score, that's not what we do. We really count this only perivascular space that appear in the slice showing the entire commissure. So that's that slice. You see a lot more perivascular spaces in the lower part of the basal ganglia, and that's actually very common in the general population. You often see people with perivascular spaces at the lower part of the basal ganglia, and this is quite. I mean, there's still a lot of research being done on perivascular spaces, but these are thought to be less the sign of a pathology than the other one. That's the hypothesis. So we don't count those because you would see those a bit anyway in most people. That's a bit the idea. And if you would always look at the slice that has the most perivascular space, you would often go to that slice. So there are quite some perivascular spaces here in the lower part of the basal ganglia, but we don't take that into account in the Rotterdam scores. I would do like in all this area. Yeah, so all this. So this one, that's why I was a bit, you know, I was thinking, maybe this one is a bit at the border, so I'm not sure if I would count it or not. You could count in, like maybe you would count 3, you know. But yeah, so that's this part and then this part, and the same on the other side. This. Yeah. Yeah, so that can also happen sometimes that you have some. That's a good point. It can also happen sometimes that there is some variability because you consider that the perivascular space was outside of the basal ganglia, and someone else or you. In another rating counted as inside, so that's a good point. That also can happen. So it's quite difficult to alleviate this. So yeah, you have to try to be a bit consistent with that, with how you assess perivascular spaces at the border. Yeah. So yeah, I would think that I wouldn't count this one. But often, if it's, you know, like just. You have also to think that it's just 1 or 2 perivascular space. It won't really affect very much like your how consistent you are with yourself. It's okay sometimes to have one or 2 perivascular space more, like provided that your global, provided it's consistent with what you have done before. That's more. It's more important to be consistent with what you have done before. So we can go to the centrum semioval. Yeah, so now, so you see, like I see the ventricles, and you see like this, the intensity of the ventricles, it's still like the same intensity, but now it's like the intensity is lower. So this I would count, I wouldn't count it, okay. So I would, so this would be the first slice I would count outside. So I would count 1 centimeter about this from here, and I think in our scans it's like we count like 10 slices. So I would go here. So yeah, so I'm at 125. So I should go to 135. So if I do it like 1 by 1, it would be like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 135. And then I would count perivascular spaces in this region. So sometimes you have to be careful because you can, like there are sulcis, maybe if you look at it only in one slice, you think it's a perivascular space, but you really have to scroll up and down around that slice to be able to see the structure of perivascular space. You always, when you want to check that it's perivascular space, you always have to a bit look at the structure. So do this, you know, to have an idea of what is what. So yeah. So that's a bit tricky. So you see, like for instance, I see one. So I would say, like, you know, go like I don't know. You can start on one side to the top, you go to the bottom, and then you come back so that you're sure that you go through everything. So if you don't see, if it's not striking in this slice, then you just don't count it basically. So here I see one. I checked it. Here you see there are a few, like. If I count it like this with a low threshold, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for instance. And then you see there are other ones, but they are not, you know, very visible. So, you know, like here I wouldn't count more than 5 for those. And then you should check the gyri. You see a bit some perivascular space in the gyri, but they have really a low intensity, so you wouldn't count them in the scoring. And the other side is the same thing. And here I see one, here a smaller one. So like it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's it, you know, basically. But now there are also these perivascular spaces. They are quite small. So maybe I would say like I could aggregate those more and say 6. You know. So yeah, because this is really a scan that has almost no perivascular spaces in the centrum semioval. So this it wouldn't, you know, like. Would be 7. It starts to be maybe I would just say 6 or something. You should only count the ones that are visible, clearly visible in this slide. Yeah, like it could be, for instance, that's for instance, I don't know, like yeah, for instance, you see this perivascular space is quite visible in the slide 137. But if you go to slide 135, you kind of see maybe, you know, like the continuation of this perivascular space, you see, but it's almost not visible on that slide. So it's not more visible than any other perivascular spaces here. So I would just not count it, although it's a perivascular space that is very visible on the other slides. Yeah, and it's the same with this one. Here you see quite. You have to be careful that it's not a sulci because it's quite close to that. So it seems to be a quite large perivascular space, but it's not. Yeah, this is kind of tricky because you see, like, could be just a sulci. So yes, you have to be careful. This, like for instance, this one is quite a clear perivascular space here, but you see when we are like at this slice is almost not visible anymore. So maybe it's even another one. So I wouldn't count this. So it's really the one that you see clearly visible on the slice that you annotate, that you score. And even though you see continuation of other perivascular spaces that might be visible in other slices, you won't score those in the slice. Yeah. So I go to the midbrain, up. Here I see, I don't see some in the midbrain. So this I would just say like 0. Then I look at the hippocampi. So here you see like a small one. So this could be 1, but it's small. So yeah. It's quite small. I don't even find it again. Yeah. So 1, like half maybe, you know. here I see 1, so that's 1, 2, here a small one. So maybe I would just say 2 on that side. And on this side, then I see 1 here, that's quite obvious. Another one here. You could count this, maybe this one maybe. So, and here there's a small one here. So there are quite some small one here. It's a bit tricky. So there's like a small one here, a larger one here. 2, 3. You could even count 4 on that side. So as they are small, I would just count 3 because there are small ones. So 3 on that side and then 2 on that side. So that would be 5. Yeah, it's always a bit tricky. So this I would say 5. And sorry. So then the basal ganglia. So first I try to find the slice that has the anterior commissure. So here you start to see it. So I have to choose between this and that one, and I think it's a bit more visible on this one, so I would do the writing on this slice. And here again, there are not a lot of periascal spaces. Maybe you can see a small one here. You see this one again, it's like at the border, so it's not very sure you should count it. There is one here that is quite small. So this I would, and then you see also a little smaller ones, but this I would say like maybe like I would say 2, let's say, because I see this small one, this small one, and this small one. So yeah, either 1 or 2 I would say in this one in that case. So let's check, you know, like what you said earlier. So we see like more periascal spaces at the bottom again, you know, that's as we explained earlier. But you just don't consider those. You just really look at those that are visible in the slice that shows the anterior commissure. Then the centrum semioval. So you see, like I tried to find the right slice. Yeah, so here you can still see the intensity of the ventricles. And here it's less, so I would count 10 after this. So at 134 this time. Now I will count periascal space in that slice. So I have like 1 here, maybe 2. So nothing in the gyri. Like here there is some, so like 3, 4. This, but it's quite small. Yeah, so you see this, I would say something like 4. And now I also think always when I do that about the scans that I did already. And yeah, so this is like 4, the other one we had 6, you know, so that's comparable, and that's like comparable in terms of periascal spaces, you know, so that makes sense. And for the basal ganglia, it was also like comparable, like maybe a bit less even here, and that's what I had. Midbrain there was 0, okay, and hippocampi there was also, it was a bit similar. So those scans they are similar. I got similar scores, so that's fine. You see like few here in the middle. Maybe I would count like 1 or 2 and not more. Maybe just 1 again, you know. Then here the hippocampi up. Here. So here you see 1 here, 2, 3. And 4, 5. Here there are 2, but they are small. So again, something like 5, I think. So like similar than as before. And now I try to find in the basal ganglia Yeah, so I would take this one because that's the one that's most clearly visible, and this is the one in between. And again, you know, don't see a lot of perivascular spaces here. So probably be again some maybe you see one here, like you see also some here. Here you see one that's more visible, but it's not in the slice that we are annotating. So it appears only slightly. So I would say like one or two here, maybe one, just it's even less than what we had before. In the hippocampi, so here I see, so it's one, I see the last one, so then I go 129 up. I looked at here, you know. And yeah, again, there's almost nothing, so it's just maybe, so always, you know, do the same thing. So here, like, maybe there's one little here, little one here, maybe. It's almost nothing, it's even less than what we had before. So, and one here, maybe, and this, yeah, okay, this is one. But this is quite tricky, like if you look at it only like this, it could look like a white matter appendice. But then I look at through the slices and then I see it as some sort of tubular structure. So actually it's probably a perivascular space. Then if you want to be sure, you see, like I can show you maybe now if the computer collaborates. But if you want to, so here I would say like maybe I would say like 2 or 3, you know, in this slice. So I want to show you with the flare. Normally that's how we would do it. You would look at the flare and check on the flare what you can see. Yes, and it's tricky. So you see like the white thing on the flare, that's white matter appendices. So if I look at my slice with 129, here I was not sure, and it's like actually black on the flare, so it is a perivascular space. That was the right analysis. Like for instance, here you see some white things. You see this is not perivascular space. You see it's much, the borders, they are much less clear than perivascular space. So usually it's not a big, I mean, in these cases it's really not a problem. Sometimes it can be that the white matter appendices, they have a shape by chance that is a bit similar to perivascular spaces. And then it can be a bit, it can be changing. So in that case, it's not really a problem. You see here also some white matter appendices there. You wouldn't have mixed that for perivascular space. It looks really different, like the morphology is really different. Yes. And you see here, for instance, maybe I can just, you know, like look at other slice and tell you what I would do, but instead of looking at more scans. But you see here, like there are more perivascular spaces. You see all of this. So yeah, this you would count, like that's your question, the question of earlier, like this more elongated perivascular space you would count, and then you would just count this as one also. Yeah, so here, for instance, like these are clear perivascular spaces. So on T1s it's a bit different, but it's like instead of the perivascular spaces, instead of being white hyperintense, on T1s they are black hypointense. Usually you see perivascular space a bit less well on T1 than you can see them on T2. So if you have the choice, you should rather choose to use the T2s if you have. If you don't, you can also write perivascular spaces on T1s. You see, it's 1 by 1 by 3, and often it's 1 by 1. Like there are a lot, like T1s are often 1 by 1, and 3 is often like in clinical settings. The midbrain. So you see like something here. So this is really like a severe case. So like maybe 1, 2. So this would be 2, maybe 3 here. Super difficult to see. So maybe I would just say 2. Then the hippocampi, the hippocampi is here, I think. Super weird, yeah, that's like crazy. So maybe one here, or this is, yeah, no, this you see is separated from the CSF, so there's one here. And here you can see some, so maybe I will also count one. It's really more tricky. Then 2, 3, 4. Wow. Not even sure how to count this. This is too big, you know, to be like periosteal space. So I don't think I'd count this. Maybe like 4 or something in the hippocampi. It's really tricky. So then you have to think, like, am I consistent with what I did before? Like now, as the first one I'm doing, it's a bit more difficult to do that. So here, I think you would pick that one. That's the one that shows the best anterior commissure. And here you see a lot of crap. Like this is super big, so like when it's too large, you just can't count it. But maybe you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's really difficult. 9. So maybe I would count 10 or something, like in total. Yeah. Then I think it's good at the beginning that you look at a few scans without really doing the rating. You just like try to rate it for yourself, and then at some point you see you have something that's like consistent. Maybe like now I say 10, but maybe later I will. It has to make sense as a whole. So if I say 10 here, but maybe later I see the scan that has like many more perivascular spaces. I mean, as long as you are 1, you can always adapt your scale, of course. But yeah, so yeah, maybe I would say something like 10, but maybe it could be more, So more difficult because some like you don't see them separate. Maybe like there are 2 here that are just next to each other. Because of the partial volume effect, it's really difficult to say. And then we said it's 3 mm, so I will just count 3 slices. So that's the last one. So then I will count 1. Oops. Wait. So that's the last one. So it's 29. So it's 32. Yes. So then I would do perivascular space in that slice. So then I see 2 big things here, but it's too large to be perivascular spaces. So it's difficult. Like here, I think it's also just the continuation of the sulci. So I wouldn't count this. Here the same. It's quite tricky. So I would definitely this. I think it's 1. Yeah, this case is really challenging. Here I would see 1 perivascular space, but doesn't appear. I think this is a perivascular. It's super difficult because as the slice thickness is high, you cannot even really like follow the perivascular space in 3D to see the structure. So I would have 1 here. Sorry. Yeah, maybe this, but it's very difficult to see here. You see many more actually in this slice than in this one, so that's quite tricky. Here you don't see that many. You see some like sulci, but you don't see that many perivascular spaces. Here you see more, for instance, perivascular spaces. Like you see this thing here, this one here, this one here. So yeah, it's a bit, so sometimes you see it's very tricky because maybe you won't choose exactly the same slice as I did, and then it's not, it won't be comparable, but the idea is that over the large sets, you know, like these errors, they will average out. So yeah, I would just say like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 in this one, the centrum semi-oval. But here you could also see that you are seeing like many more perivascular spaces in the basal ganglia than in the centrum semi-oval, so that also makes sense, you know, like region-wise. So let's pick another one. I see one here, and that's it. So here it has like 1 perivascular space. Then if I look at the hippocampi, so you see, you could even think in the midbrain, you could even think about counting this one. So here you don't see anything. Maybe here 1. On the other side. So don't see anything. So like 1 in the hippocampi. So here, you see here, up. So I would hesitate between this, or so this or that. Yeah, you have 2 in which. So this is really tricky because if there are 3 in which you can see the anterior commissure, it's always safe to take the one in between, you know. But here there are only 2, so it could really be that maybe one time you take this one and the other time this one. But here I think it's a bit more clearly, the anterior commissure is a bit more clearly visible in this one, 97, than in this one. Ah, wait, it's inverted. So I mean, in the one, it's more clearly visible in 96 than in 95. So I would just do it in 96. And here you see a few perivascular spaces, but not crazy. So there's maybe 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's hardly visible. I would say something like, yeah, here you see more on that side, but not here. So yeah, I think I would say 4. Maybe this, yeah, 4 or 5, you know, 4, yeah, something like that. And then for the centrum semi-oval, so here, yeah. It's tricky, should I count this one or not? Yeah, it's quite tricky. But you see that the intensities, they are not as dark as here. So I would say this is the last one, and this you don't count. So I would count, so it's 1 millimeter, so I would count 10 from that one, so it's 65. So it should be 70, right, 65. Ah, it's like reversed, like the, so it should be 55. Yeah, so I'll do the ratings here. And because the scale is reversed, like the scales here are not as you would expect. So yeah, you also don't see that many perivascular spaces. I almost see nothing. Like there's 1 here. You have to be careful because this could also be no. So yeah, you clear. Yeah, It's a bit tricky. It could be sulci, you see, but I think it's rather perosclear space. So I would count one ER. Maybe here you also see something. Yeah, there's almost no perosclear space that you can see really well in this one. So I would just say, I think for this one I would just say 1. Yeah. So there are a lot of perosclear spaces, some that are like much larger here, for instance, and others, and those. So I would just go from top to bottom. Here it's also a bit difficult because it's been segmented, so it's more difficult to see the gyri, and it's just in one slice, so I cannot scroll. But if I would just have to rate it on the basis of that, I would go over here. Here I would see that there are a few. But they are all kind of small, so I would say like maybe 1 or 2 in this cluster. Then I have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6. Then there are like maybe some here, so like 7, 8, like 9, 10, 11. Maybe this I didn't count. 12, 13, 14, 16, 17. Perfect. But you see, like I kind of, and maybe I would have counted this here as 1 more, or and then 18, 19, you know. So. Like maybe I would have counted like this. Maybe if you would think like maybe it would range between like 15 and 20. You know, like, and what you can do is count it multiple times also. Then like maybe the first time I found like 19, let's say, then I would count it again. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you see, maybe 21. So maybe, you know, like I think, okay, yeah, that's the right thing. So yeah, I give 17, and maybe you could give like something like 19 or 20 or something, you know. So that's a bit the idea. And now I have this one, and I do the same thing. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a bit more tricky because here you really see some larger ones and some smaller ones. But here you see some that are more isolated. So maybe like 1, so here maybe like, here you say like 2 halves, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see I see like clusters and I count them like as like 1, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, maybe here. You see, and then maybe here also, or this one. So maybe like there are some small ones, so like 17 maybe, you know. So, but this, like there are less perosclear spaces than that one. So let's say now if I counted like 19, 20 for this one and 16 for this one, that would be right. You see here, I mean here it's a bit more tricky because there are less, but they are a bit more spread out through the brain, and here there are more, the burden seems higher, but they are more like concentrated in one area. But I would say that in general you should have at least less for this one than this one, which was the case here. Maybe the difference could be larger. Like what matters is that it makes sense overall. Yeah, and then you have what the algorithm did. So you see like here there was misdetection. But you see that like sometimes it classified a bit of sulci, but overall it did a bit what I would do like visually, so that's a good sign. And yeah, same story. Yeah, there are also like some false positives. Yeah, like this, I don't think it's very square space. Yeah, and this example, okay, like the basal ganglia, this is a little bit tricky. So here 8, because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, something like this. And here 9, but here you see like there are many more perivascular spaces than here 1. So you should have at least more, maybe it could have been more than 9, no? But it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I would count a bit more than 9 in this one. I would count like maybe 12 or so, or something. So this is a little bit low estimation. If you're not consistent with yourself, then it's really difficult to make something out of it, basically. So the first rule is be consistent with yourself. Like you have to think like, if I would do it again, would I do something similar or not? And to do that, you can like literally do it again just now and say, ah yeah, I find a bit approximately the same number. Or maybe you take the average. If you did like 2 or 3 times, if you think it's difficult, maybe you do it several times. And then maybe you take like the average of the different time you did it to have some like more stable estimate. And you can do that especially in the beginning, you know, when you are training. And I think at some point, when you have done enough scorings, you can have like a good first impression on what rating you would give to the scan, without having yourself to like maybe like score multiple times the same scan. You can see some white matter intensity indeed, especially if you have a clinical dataset. It's quite likely that you see white matter intensities. Yeah, just ignore the white matter intensities. Sometimes it can also happen that the perivascular space occur inside white matter intensities, so you should also count those. And usually in T2 sequence you would see that because they have even like the white matter intensity, it would be hypo-intense, but not hyper-intense, sorry, but not as hyper-intense as the enlarged perivascular space. And you would see clearly the structure. So you can still see, often perivascular space. I mean, often if you have a clinical data set, perivascular space on top of white matter intensities. But just ignore the white matter intensity, basically. No, it's important to keep always like the 1 centimeter above the highest point of lateral ventricle. Yeah, it's super important that you are consistent in the slice that you choose to do the rating, and that it follows the guideline. Yeah, no, so you like choose the one that's 1 centimeter above, even if it's like any hour. No, hippocampus and midbrain, it's in the complete volume. So I really like scroll through the complete volume and then count perivascular spaces as I see them. Yeah, no, I prefer to not count too much because when you start to count more, then it quickly becomes intractable. So if I have to decide between counting more or less, I would rather count less in general. Because then, you know, like you start to count some that are really like, you know, not super visible, and then you have to think for all the others whether you count them or not. So it raises a lot more question and uncertainty. So usually I prefer to have a less conservative threshold. And yeah, and I mean that's a good point you raised. I want to speak about it at some point. I think I forgot about like changing the intensity, the window leveling on the image. So if you do that, of course, if you increase the contrast, you will see like more perivascular spaces. And so you have to be careful, I think, to kind of not do that too much. So what I would do in general is that I would try for an image to like keep the contrast, you know, at the beginning. If I don't see it very well, I would keep the contrast, maybe I'd play a bit with the contrast. But once I set the contrast for one image, I would try to avoid changing it too much for like other images, because it will create some some, you know, like of course, like if you increase the contrast, you will see more Perryscroll spaces, and then you will tend to count more Perryscroll spaces too. So I would say change the contrast middle leveling the least possible. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I hope that it gave you the information you are looking for, and that now you'll be able either to understand better the visual scorings that we use in the Rotterdam Scan Study to quantify enlarged Perryscroll spaces, or that you will be able to also rate enlarged Perryscroll spaces using our score, the Rotterdam scale. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of your day.